Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Wright Brothers Reviews. I am Trey Felder coming at you with another thrilling blockbuster review. Just kidding. We just review whatever we want to when it comes to pop culture. And this latest one about Top Gun Maverick is probably one of the most anticipated that I know I've ever done. Let's get right down into it. So, as many of you know, Hollywood has been pretty roundly panned the last, decade and a half, maybe longer, for a complete and utter lack of originality. So naturally, when I heard that there was going to be a Top Gun sequel, my first reaction was, oh my God, how are they going to mess this one up? And then expecting the usual round of people to be, either for it or against it, or for there to be some message crowbarred into it, something of that nature, usually something that, we could hold on to be disappointed by. As time went on, though, I started to realize there's a lot of positive things being said about this movie. So my wife and I decided to finally go and check it out. We haven't watched very many movies on the big screen recently. I think a lot of people can probably say the same with us between COVID restrictions and everything that are finally starting to be lifted. It's been kind of hard to get out to the movie theater, and we've seen the rise of streaming content become king, and that's all well and good. It's very convenient. We all know why that is, but there is something to be said for a summer blockbuster movie experience. So we took a flyer on Top Gun Maverick just to see what all the fuss was about. And thankfully, we were not disappointed in the least, y'all. This movie was a hell of a lot of fun. Now, I know most of y'all by the time this comes out will have seen it by now, but what my wife and I decided to do was go back and watch the original one on a streaming platform, of course, from 1986, and kind of put that one in the forefront of our minds before we walked into the movie theater to look at the sequel. And I'm really glad that we did that because, no matter how many times you've seen a movie, after it's been a minute, some of those iconic lines or just the way that scenes look might have started to fade just a little bit. So we were able to go in with the 86 Top Gun fresh in our minds and fresh from the decade my wife and I were born. We were both born in the 80s, so it's always been kind of a fun little bit of trivia for us. So going into Top Gun Maverick, we were fully immersed in the world and ready to see what this new one had to bring to us. And man, I can tell you that from the get-go, we could tell it was going to be good. They nailed everything with casting, they nailed everything with message, even nailed it with the music. There's a tendency in Hollywood, I'm sure we all know, of studios to kind of go in and take an original soundtrack and try to jazz it up, put a modern spin on it. This movie didn't really do that until towards the end. Even then, it wasn't even that overbearing. They did a great job. They opened the score the exact same way. A lot of the footage was the same. They just spliced in new stuff. You could see some of the transition from older technology to newer technology. It was really, really a lot of fun to watch and see how they introduced these new elements as they went along. And that transitions very well into the story. Of course, Tom Cruise is going to get his airtime. He always does, and he was fantastic in this one once again. But what I really appreciated was the casting all around Tom Cruise. It was extremely believable and very much in the spirit of the first film. And what I really wanted to capture was not so much just recapping the events of the film itself, but just the overall feel of it. It's really fascinating how so much time passed between the first Top Gun and the sequel, and yet they still managed to strike much of the same aesthetic. And it wasn't just with camera tricks, it wasn't a retro homage, if you will, but for a movie that didn't take itself entirely seriously, because this is the Top Gun world, the one thing that they did take serious as a heart attack was making sure that this Top Gun Maverick film was a worthy successor to the original. And I feel like they accomplished that in spades. What I mean by casting was, as many of you know, my wife and I are former military ourselves, and so is my mom and my brother-in-law and my dad, all veterans. So we're very sensitive to any portrayals of the military on screen. We thought that they did a really good job. Of course, we're not Navy people, we're Air Force, but this is a movie about flight, so a lot of the jargon is the same, and they did a really good job. My wife even mentioned during part of it, like it's cool seeing this side, the action side of what she did. Many of y'all know she worked some combat adjacent stuff without getting too deep into it. But to see her have an appreciation for the film and for it to mirror my own, that was actually a huge. It was a feather in the film's cap, in my opinion, just because we were able to fully immerse ourselves in the world and see kind of the modern military that we separated from not too long ago reflected well in the film. There's a female aviator in there. There's minority aviators in there. A lot of parallels to the first film, but you can still see how the military war machine, if you will, has evolved in the decades that transpired from the first film to the second, and they did so in a way where you didn't have to have some overarching message just browbeaten in, and I realize that a lot of people on the right side of the aisle have kind of glommed onto the fact that, hey, this is not a woke movie, this is just a regular movie. It goes beyond that. I think there's a time and place for a lot of movies to hone in on the acceptance factor. Okay, we have a female pilot. This is why that's awesome. We have a prominent African American or the minority in this movie. Here's why that's such a amazing, remarkable thing. There's a time and place for those movies, and there's also a time and place to not have that in a movie. And what I'm trying to get at is, we've already moved past that in Top Gun Maverick. This is the acceptance phase. Nobody bats an eye when a Top Gun graduate who's a female walks into the room. No one bats an eye when it's a black male. That everybody's just accepted. And we look at this. Okay, this is a team of badasses, and now let's watch them go do badass stuff. And that is the next phase of the movie, because man alive, if Top Gun the original was groundbreaking when it came to its camera work, Top Gun Maverick completely pushed that package to the limit. The camera angles and stunts that they did in this movie were flat out incredible. It almost sounds like hyperbole, but you could feel the G's that are being portrayed on screen when you see these actors in the cockpits. A lot of practical effects. We all know Tom Cruise is very, very proud of getting as many practical effects in his films as possible. But they blend that seamlessly with whatever CG was used, and it gets to the point where you almost don't even care about what's CGI, what's practical. It's all portrayed seamlessly on screen very well, and I highly recommend that you go watch this movie in IMAX. Even if you've seen it on the regular screen, go watch it in IMAX. My wife and I might go watch it again. I'm not even kidding. I want to try out the D-box seats that shake you around. That might be a little bit too jarring depending on how awake she and I are at the time. But at the end of the day, the story itself blends in beautifully with the original, and it gets a little angsty at points, which isn't to be unexpected because the first one had some typical movie angst in it. But at the same time, it felt natural. It felt a part of this world. It felt a natural continuation of both the military and of filmmaking and of everything that went into the original Top Gun. I felt was portrayed beautifully here. And the last thing I'll say about it is, as far as suspense goes, I tried to go in with as few spoilers as possible. I don't really care too much if a movie is spoiled for me. I managed to avoid some of the big ones going in, so I'm not going to spoil it here for y'all, even though I'm sure many of you have already seen it. But they do a really, really good job of keeping the suspense going. There were some moments of true peril in the film where you're like, okay, I don't know if so-and-so is going to make it or not, or who's going to slide in here, who's going to save the day or not save the day. It was extremely well done. And another thing that I wanted to mention is that I thought something that the first Top Gun did really well was portray dogfighting and air-to-air combat without really focusing on the opponent as much. Of course, you have your bogeys, you have the enemy aircraft, but for the most part, they are nameless and faceless. And we kind of had a continuation of that in this film, where yes, you have an objective, you have an enemy that you're trying to evade and or engage as a last possible resort. But most of the antagonistic parts of the movie were based on circumstance and based on terrain and based on equipment and stuff that we can all relate to, even if we haven't been in the military or flown a jet. That's really what I thought was fascinating about this film, because you could easily have seen it taken into a preachy direction one way, a preachy direction another way. You could have seen it get political necessarily. I mean, all of those were viable options for this type of film, and Lord knows they would have had the money to do it and get away with it probably. But the fact that they chose not to do that was really impressive, and I thought that they were able to do that and kind of get back to the roots of just making a good, solid movie that as many people as possible can enjoy. And that's really the best part about Top Gun Maverick. I don't care whether you are military, active duty, veteran, or civilian, never been on a military installation before in your life. I think you can watch Top Gun Maverick, come out of it feeling good about yourself, good about movie making, good about being an American at the end of the day, and without necessarily being just browbeat with patriotism either. It's just a fun, quality, solid film that Hollywood should be making more of. It's just clean, authentic fun. And if Hollywood is ever to return to a golden era of movie making, movies like Top Gun Maverick are definitely the blueprint for that. Now, that might seem like Mission Impossible with, Tom Cruise. He's getting up there in years, might be hanging him up soon, but it's really well within the realm of possibility. And we saw, I thought, a really cool example of how that can be done, even in a sequel. And like we said, originality notwithstanding, they still had a fresh new storyline. And I'm excited to see if other studios follow suit, because if they do, then we might be seeing Hollywood get back on its feet again, which is something we can all enjoy. So anyway, for those of y'all that have seen the movie, tell me what you thought of it. Did you think it was a worthy successor to the original Top Gun? Did you appreciate or think that too much time had passed in between Top Gun 1 and 2? Just let us know what you think. And as always, be sure to like, share, subscribe, engage with us on all of our social media platforms. My brother Damani is everywhere, as y'all know: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I usually hang out on Twitter myself, but my conversation can range from sports to family to the weather. So you never know what you're going to get with me, but I still always enjoy hobnobbing with y'all and just kind of picking your brain and seeing what y'all are thinking about the state of the world, because everybody says we're all in this together, but we really are all in this together as far as perspectives, and I love to hear y'all's. So thank you so much, and I'll let y'all know if I give it a rewatch for Top Gun Maverick, and if I'm as impressed. I'm thinking I will be. But until then, we'll see you in the next one. Take care.
The first revolution is when you change your mind about how you look at things and see that there might be another way to look at it that you have not been shown. The revolution will not be televised, and be no rerun, brothers and sisters. The revolution will be live.